we start off to talk about your a little bit about your background and kind of the clients you've served, and yeah, I've actually never really talked too much about your clientele, so I'd love to hear about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, my background is I'm an Emory University trained obstetrician and gynecologist. I have then continued on in my study in functional medicine, anti-aging and regenerative medicine, and specialized in bioidentical hormones and women's sexual health. And so I practiced in St. Simon's Island, Southeast Georgia. I was a National Health Service Corps scholar out of residency, that paid for my med school. So I came to Southeast Georgia and I practiced in rural Georgia in a little shrimping community actually called Darien, Georgia. So I was the only OBGYN in Darien, Georgia in the history of McIntosh County. So that was pretty cool, let alone bilingual, Spanish and English.
Wow.
And so I just had a lot of experience. And what that really taught me to do is look for alternative ways to help people because of financial constrictions too and access issues. So I started really digging into the underlying issues and avoiding surgery and how we can, make for better health, before pregnancy, after pregnancy, in the menopause and beyond, and how we can actually avoid surgeries. And so in that experience and in that community, and then with my practice, that's how I really dug in. I solo practice, like Marcus Welby, MD, or was that right? Marcus Welby? That's the name? Yeah, way back when.
From a TV show, yeah.
Before your time. So, the solo country doc, and so I really had to look for answers on my own, and I was a researcher to begin with, so I dug into research, and I kind of just built my practice from there, thinking everyone was doing the same thing, and lo and behold, it's not the case. And functional medicine, bioidentical hormones, using alternative integrative therapies is not standard care, and even the standard is continuing to be taught what I was taught. But I always say, when I come across a difficult case and I look in my doctor's bag and there's not a solution, I've got to find one. And so that's how I built my practice and used bioidenticals for sexual health and really help with avoiding hysterectomy and ovarian surgeries and breast diseases, and integrated these philosophies into my practice to be where I am now in a consultant and teaching role for other physicians in this area.
Cool. Yeah, I think it's so great to have that base of experience where you're just seeing like a lot of people and you're just seeing everybody under the sun, and it really teaches you so much. You're learning on the fly, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So now your practice has changed. You do more online work. I'm wondering if your clientele has changed, maybe over time. Have you seen of clients kind of change with a changing culture?
Well, it's interesting because in the Southeast now, I retired my clinical medical practice 3 years ago. I focus on family and then my online teaching and consulting practice. But so what I noticed was very interesting in our Southeast Georgia culture was the sense that, I'm destined to have the fate of my parents, like hysterectomies run in the family, right? Diabetes run in the family, heart disease runs in the family. And so there was that kind of initial frame of thought that was going on. And as I continued in my practice over the decade, people then started, instead of just wanting, hey, just take my uterus out, right? Why would we do that? And so the culture shifted to like, hey, I want to keep everything that God gave me. So over the past decade, 2 decades, that it really became a very, that part of my clientele. I mean, I treated clients from Singapore, from Canada, from really around the world, and locally would come to see me for the approach, whether they heard me lecture or teach or physician recommended. So it was the approach to avoid surgery. So my clientele developed that way. Like, okay, well, what can I do naturally, or how can I get in balance? And looking at the root of the cause, so I would say the underlying issues of what's going on. And that stems from, we go to the cell layer and how we implement that. And then menopause in women, Bridget, we both work with women, and we know that like the research hasn't been done on us, right? There's, the majority of nutrition plans and recommendations, et cetera, have not been studied in any legalistic, any type of controlled way in women, let alone menopausal women, right? Rarely menopausal women. And it's all, retrospective. It all kind of looks back on client analysis. So we really need to look forward. And that's what I've done in my Magic Menopause program. I took, in this virtual community, I took them through dietary changes, lifestyle changes, but diet and exercise is 25% of the picture. I really want to emphasize that for women. Your diet and exercise doesn't work because it's only 25% of the picture. It is not the whole thing. It is not the whole, there's so much more to it than what we eat and how we move. Now that is a big part of it, like I said, 25%, but there's 75% of other things that come into play, especially in our menopausal state, in our hormone shifts, and as we transition. So that's been my area of study and passion as I, experience it myself. I said, I have no makeup on, I'm good enough, because I had a hot flash and I was just waiting for my face to cool down, and then time got away from me. Put lipstick on.
She's doing it right here in the air, folks. So, I have a lot of questions for you about your philosophy, but let's start with that. So you say diet and exercise are only 25%. I bet our viewers would like to know what's the other 75%.
Yeah, I think we have to go into that. Hold on, let's check. Okay. The other.
She's looking at the computer to put her lipstick on it.
We do it blindfolded. So I would say the other, there's several components. I always look at it as a head to toe approach of the body image. I'm very visual, and that's how I teach, and I use a lot of visualization. So if you look at the head to toe approach, we look at the head first and just think, what is our mental atmosphere? What are our thoughts? We say our thoughts control our direction, right? Our moods, etc. But understand, like, what is our mental atmosphere? How are we phrasing things? What are the fears, the shame, the guilt that are holding us hostage? And let's let go of that. And I work to create a safe space for my clients because I want that safe space. I'm going to share in confidence my shame, my guilt, my fear. I've been there too. I always say I've had the battle wounds and scars to prove it. Y'all, I've been to hell and back. And I know what that's like. So in this transition time, all those old things can tend to emerge, and it's really a beautiful time to hold that sacred space and clear ourselves from those, negative thinking, negative thoughts, or the chains. We say break these chains, right?
Yeah.
Really hugely important at this time, and really as a gift to ourselves that we hold this space to do it. So, one of the ways is just really being conscious of our mental atmosphere. Guys do it better, I think, than women for the most part. They are trained to focus on the good aspects. Let me just give you an example, if that's okay. So if I have a woman in my office, and I remember this client had chronic pelvic pain, a lot of issues with chronic pelvic pain, but I sat back one day after seeing her for over a year, and I said, well, what do you like about yourself? And she goes, nothing. I like nothing about myself. I said, wait, you've got gorgeous hair. And she goes, oh yeah, I love my hair. And all of a sudden her mood shift, she smiled big and she goes, yeah, I do love my hair. And she totally shifted. I'm like, just focus on your hair for the next couple of weeks. Just keep that, just start seeding. But if you don't like anything about yourself, how are you going to like anything around you too, right? We have to start with liking ourselves. And sometimes it's in pieces to start with your hair. But guys do it really well. Like a woman will walk by a mirror, right? A mirror or glass window, right? They'll look in and say, oh my gosh, does my butt look fat in this dress? And, that's the first thing versus, hey, I'm looking hot, rocking this dress. the guy will walk by and be like, oh, look at these bicep, man, I got these great biceps going on. And he will totally ignore his beer belly. He will totally ignore the gut, right? And guys have a habit to focus on what they like. And that's the same with us. They will focus on what they like about us. So don't bring up what you don't like.
I think that's really true. I think that's true. And I think a lot of middle-aged men, I just read a book and the main character was like this aging man. And, they just think, oh, I still got it going on. And then they get that younger girlfriend, it's like confidence, right?
Yeah. Well, Alison Armstrong said one time, and she's a specialist in kind of the male-female dynamics. And she said that she had a girlfriend and she came up to her and said, oh, well, my husband traded me in for someone with less wrinkles. And she said, not less wrinkles, less resentment. And we have to think about that. Again, how are we approaching our days? Where's our spiritual center? And I have a mantra, Bridget. I want really every woman to just see how this mantra sits with them. But for me, it's been a grace. It's been a grace. So you ready for my mantra? Okay, our listeners, write this down. Let's just say your soul image takes precedence over your body's image, over your body image, over your self-image, and over your other image. So what others think about you, your own impression of your body, your own self-image, your soul image takes precedence over that. And your soul is divine, right? We are divine children of God. And so hold that space for yourself and just say, okay, well, I may not have done everything right today, but my soul image is good. It's there. Just please start shining through. I kind of have to think that, especially we look through and I talk to women about this in my menopause program, and we have fears of aging. When the skin starts thinning and we bruise easier and we see these changes and you think, oh my gosh, look at that, 80-year-old or 90-year-old and their skin so thin and bruising, or diseases of aging, etc. And instead you just want to focus, I always say focus on all the good, but there's some fears with that. So we really have to focus on nurture and really, honor this journey, this spiritual image or the soul image that we have of ourselves, and just embrace that aspect. I think that's key.
Yeah, I like how you said it was like a sacred time to do so. I think some people kind of think of like menopause as like a negative, but, I'm 42. I'm in more perimenopause, but I've been going through a lot of change lately, and I think it's just amazing and like so, I'm getting emotional, like so productive spiritually. Like I'm just, questioning the way I react to things and think about things, and questioning the way like I interact with my husband and like improving upon that. And I just think it's a time where everybody's different. Some people have young kids at this time. Some people have kids growing up, but whatever your situation is, it does seem to be a time where things are changing and it lets you reevaluate. And I think it can be really fruitful and amazing.
Yeah, absolutely can be. And I think there is so much that comes up. There's a freedom that will come forth if we let it. You have to let it. And like, you emphasized holding that sacred space for yourself, holding that sacred space for your family, looking to the good things and focusing on those good things, amidst of all the bad, right? I think that's a huge shift. That's a huge shift for all of us.
Yeah, and I think it's good to have, role models. Like, I mean, you're like an amazing glowing. I put that on my ad. I'm like, she's amazing and glowing from the inside out.
Definitely glowing during my hot flash.
And I have some other friends in my life who I'm like, like I want to be just like you when I'm 60, and I want to be just like you when I'm 57, because they just have so much grace, and they're still just carry themselves with like so much beauty, and they're just amazing people. So yeah, so thank you for being a role model. And let's keep going down the body. Yeah, go ahead.
One thing is because you talked about, like how you relate, what I see often in the late 30s, early 40s, again, we're starting to shift hormones. I mean, 35 to 70s, there's a continuum of hormonal shifts, and you may be in it once, twice, many times during this stage, during this time frame over the decade. So, that's okay. But note that, during this time, there's also relationships are so important. And when there's physiologic tension in our bodies, physiologic shifting, there can be relationship friction. And somehow they go hand in hand. So really, a couple points I make is just the number one is that resentment is lack of self-care, and that we as women are really good at putting everyone before ourselves and not having enough self-care. And self-care may be getting outside. Self-care may be calling up a friend and going for a walk together. And self-care may be, getting your hair done periodically. Self-care, nourishing your body with the right foods and movement, sunshine, and those things. But self-care, spiritual self-care, is really a big part of this transition stage period, which I believe that we are able to let go of a lot of things that hold us captive in the child rearing and the, work stage of frame, and keep us from that spiritual enlightenment and connection. Just now that we enter, there is that, I call it energized enlightenment. I mean, that's where I aim to go and take people with me into the state of energized enlightenment, because it's a beautiful feeling. It's a peaceful feeling and a joyful feeling. And, yeah, so I think that's a really good place to be. Then we work through relationship issues and just hold that space for each other. It's really important. And wish I could go back and fix some of the things that I didn't know in my late 30s and 40s, right? That hormonal shift, physiology drives behavior. So we've got to really be conscientious. Okay, am I acting based on my physiology because my body is kind of like all, tumultuous right now on my hormones, et cetera? Or is there, something else that needs to be worked on? So.
Yeah, I love that resentment is a lack of self-care. I think it's so true. Like, we lash out at people when we are not getting our needs met. And who's in charge of getting our needs met? Us, not that other person. So I think that rings very true to me. So we talked about the mental aspect at the head, and then you said you wanted to go down the body. Where are we going next?
Okay, so one of the ways is that mental atmosphere, and then another is the nutrition and digestion, which is really important. And as we work in functional medicine, we look at digestion and the assimilation of nutrients. As we get older, our enzymes decrease. Also in our food sources, and we can eat at a great restaurant, but if it's farm-raised fish, we're getting a dose of antibiotics and so much of what we eat right now. So that kills off our normal flora, or healthy flora, bacteria, or microbiome, which has a really significant effect on our hormones, on our mood, on our weight control, on our sleep, and the list goes on. So digestion assimilation is really important. So that's another thing. I go through it more, like when, timing of things, and so that's important. And the next way is detoxification. What comes in must go out. With women, hormones, detoxification is so important. So Bridget, for example, in my medical practice, when clients would come in with complaints of either it's PMS, it's perimenopausal symptoms, irregular bleeding, ovarian cyst, brain fog, feeling like you're on the road to Alzheimer's. I mean, all those things that come into play in the perimenopause, I would put them first, check their labs, put them on a 6-week, on a detoxification plan, 21-day detox. And that included nutritional supplements, a modified elimination diet, taking away, white sweets, and sweet and red meat. And pretty much my other rule of thumb is if you can peel it, fish and hunt it, milk it, grow it, then you can pretty much eat it. Really work on alkalinizing your diet. And so they'd come back in 6 weeks for the lab results, and they'd feel 90% better. And it was like time and time again, this was happening in my practice. And lo and behold, I didn't have to do the endometrial ablation. I didn't have to do the DNC, which is a dilatation and curettage for dysfunctional bleeding. I didn't have to do the laparoscopy. And as I kept working in this natural approach, I went from doing 2 to 3 surgeries a week, Bridget, to less than 2 to 3 a year.
Wow.
So, huge shifts. And that was just like, okay, well, every woman needs to be doing this. And that's really, over 90% without a prescription pad. So that is a huge shift, because it's not our standard of care model.
Do you want to talk more about like why taking out the white sweets and sweets would prevent this like endometrial overgrowth, and talk about kind of the hormonal processes there?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things is that we really have to honor our microbiome, but one of the big causes of the hormonal imbalances as we, from age mid-30s on is estrogen dominance. And we're in a culture of estrogen dominance now just because of the hormone disruptors in our food sources, in our water bottles, in our, everywhere you can imagine, our furniture, etc. So we are continually exposed, and then get me started on blue light frequencies, right?
Oh.
So EMFs and blue light. So we are in another environment, but it can definitely disrupt us. But estrogen dominance is a really big culprit. And so when we eliminate, so the no white, no wheat, no sweet, and very little red meat rule comes into play. So like no white bread, no white potatoes, because those are high in sugar, just avoiding, avoiding gluten, and no white and no wheat, and avoiding gluten. And I really try to get women to avoid grains altogether, especially as we hit, really been 48 for me. It'll be vary for different women, but, grains are storage food, and I don't need to store anything. Totally good. There's no energy that needs to be stored away for later. So yeah, in the form of fat deposits. No. Can't think of any reason right now. So at this state, no. But at time of famine, maybe we'll leave the grains for the times of famine when we absolutely need to have it.
Yeah, we had a conversation at my clinic yesterday about, you can get those little larvae and moths in your grain, when they're in your cabinet too long. And my receptionist was like, yeah, I get those in my grain. I'm like, no, they started in your grain. Like that starts like in the grain storage. It's so gross to think about how long it's sitting and all the like bugs that are in there, and like, who knows like when that grain was harvested. And we all love our breads and pastas and stuff. When you think about grain, it's really meant for like you said, like times of starvation. It's not really meant for like, the good stuff day to day.
Right. We're absolutely fortunate not to be faced with that in our culture. Right. But that's how it was cultivated for. So we would have grains for the famines. So that would.
Yeah. So and so people listening, if you're a little still about estrogen dominance, a little confused, like estrogen is what grows your lining. So you can get that like overly thick lining. You can get, put on weight, a lot of different disease processes can come from estrogen dominance.
Thyroid disease being one of them.
Yeah, that's true too.
Yeah. Time frame from birth control pills.
Yeah, I'm developing this quiz right now and working with a team on it. And I'm like, I just kind of occurred to me, like literally everything went back to estrogen dominance. I'm like, I think we can just redo the quiz and make all the answers go to estrogen dominance if it's behind, PMS and irregular cycles and infertility. And it's so prevalent in perimenopause and menopause. So just a brief reminder for our listeners, estrogen dominates the first part of your cycle, and then progesterone should dominate the second. So if you're ovulating weekly, not strongly, or you're not ovulating at all, which happens more towards menopause, and certainly in menopause, there starts to be an imbalance where estrogen is dominant, plus what you talked about with the the food sources of xenoestrogens and from, chemicals in our beauty products and stuff. So if you haven't really explored estrogen dominance yet, I would recommend doing a little more research to understand that process.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other part is the no sweet, so carbohydrate issues. And this was a big issue for me. And I really go deep into this in my Magic Menopause program with, real world examples and steps to help us through this. But the low carb diet, when I was working in practice with women, I know about ketogenic diets and paleo diets. But what I found is that women in Atkins program, et cetera, HCG program. But what I found is that, I would call it keto crazy. I mean, my women were going keto crazy. I was going keto crazy on a ketogenic low carb diet. I was like, okay, it's just not good for women. And then until I figured, part of the pieces of the puzzle that I put together, between age 48 and now was that piece. We do need to bump into ketosis. And that's really an important part of improving our metabolism at this stage. Our body is designed for really efficient use of our calories at this point of our life. So we need to bump into that ketosis, that fat utilization stage, right, versus sugar. But we need carbs. We need healthy alkalinizing carbs. So created the program called Keto Alkaline program or Keto Green program. And this is incorporating the two because ketogenic, paleo, Atkins, HCG tends to acidify our cellular fluid. So not talking about our blood, but talking about if we're testing in our urine or our saliva. And I figured, it's like I was working on this with myself a couple years ago now when I had my dad here and he was suffering with kidney disease at age 90. And I'm like, okay, I'm not giving up on him. I know ketogenic diet works, but why does it make me crazy? I'm cooking for the whole family. Dad's living with us. I've got kids in the house. I'm like, okay, I'm going to make this ketogenic diet work. And part of my whole restorative health program that I created several years ago was about getting alkaline. So I just started, I pretty much stay on an alkaline diet, but I would check my urine. I would stay acidic. And I kept staying acidic. And I'm like, okay, well, I've got all these, there are many factors besides what we eat that will make us acidic. So I really worked to bump myself up into alkaline. So I created urine test strips that just look at pH and ketones. They're my keto alkaline test strips. And just started checking until I would get alkaline and then go into ketosis. And it was like, oh, it was beautiful. Like the world was in vivid colors. I mean, I call that energized enlightenment. That's the stage you get to. And I really believe biblically, that's the state of, I say when Jesus went to the Garden of Gethsemane and fasted for 40 days, that was to have really clear communication with spirit, with God. And that's a state that you get into in this keto alkaline state, which is really key. And as I worked with women from around the world and also pushing their bodies at our age into the state of keto alkaline, that made a significant improvement for them too. And in that realm of having that inner peace and calm, and also melting away the fat, the fatigue, and the, I would say the fibromyalgia goes too. So we, melt away the inflammation, we melt away the fatigue, we get better blood sugar control, all those things that make for a healthier second half of our lives.
Okay, so I want to dig into this for sure. And then we better define a few things for our viewers who might not be familiar with ketogenic. So when you said you were going keto crazy, you're saying you were trying the diet and you didn't feel well, you felt anxious, or you just felt like you were trying too hard and it wasn't working?
I think crazy is pretty good. So moody, moody, agitated, off, and if anyone listening gets irritable because they're irritable, I mean, that's keto. That's that's essence of that crazy that I'm talking about. But I think when we go on that really low carbohydrate diet and we're not feeding our neurotransmitters, or we're not staying alkaline enough, we definitely are affecting our physiology. We're affecting our microbiome for sure.
Okay. So for our viewers, a ketogenic diet is the primary source of calories is fat, and then very low carb and moderate protein. That's accurate for you, Anna?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. And
healthy fats. I mean, we're talking avocados, salmon, olives, nuts, meat, fish. Yeah.
Yeah. And I would agree. I mean, I don't know if I never have done the keto strips, the testing, but I did interview 3 ketogenic people in a row once, and I got pretty into it. And there were some benefits, but yeah, I think sometimes for women, if we don't have enough carbs, we get anxious or we can't sleep well. So this is the first time hearing about this alkaline first aspect. So you're saying Tell me more about it. Basically, tell me like how, like the steps. You try to get people more alkaline first and then lower carbs, or what?
Yes, absolutely. So the
Okay.
first step is getting alkaline. And so definitely walk people through this because we want it to be a way of life, a sustainable way of life too. But in general, when we talk about detoxifying diets or healthy diets, we talk about them being 80% alkaline food based, 20% acidic food based. Think of acidic foods like meat, red wine, chocolate, teas, right? Not sugar, okay? Would be would be acidic food base. Alkaline food sources would be like, for example, maca. I'm big on my mighty maca greens. So maca is an alkalizing food source. Even lemon, which are acidic, can be alkalinizing to the body. So that's also alkalinizing. Kale, collards, beet greens. There are many vegetables and fruits that are alkalinizing to our body, but recognize that fruits have higher carbs. So they're alkalinizing, but they're not keto alkaline. They don't qualify in my outline of keto alkaline. So, but we want to get alkaline first, and that's the goal. Let's get our body alkaline, slowly wean off the carbs, and move into that state of keto alkaline. And that's because when we are acidic, we're gonna, basically the expression rob Peter to pay Paul. So we take the minerals from our bones to alkalinize our cellular matrix to keep our blood pH really perfect too. So our blood pH never rarely changes, except that's a critical disease. Our body is designed to keep our blood pH perfectly around 7.34, right? So really, really key that our blood pH stays very consistent. So, but on a cellular level, there are different, like, tissues have different functions, different pH levels, but on a cellular level, we want to keep an alkaline matrix. So that when we are acidic, we're going to leach calcium, we're going to leach magnesium, and that's got to come from somewhere. So when I started looking at that, and then looking at the younger and younger ages, or the populations that are more likely to have osteopenia, osteoporosis, that pretty much would be based on where they live, industrial environments, versus and what they eat, higher carbohydrates, higher sugar. So why were younger women especially getting osteoporosis? It's supposed to be an old woman's disease.
Yeah.
Well, if your body is really working hard to keep your pH balanced, then you're getting that from somewhere. You're getting those minerals from somewhere. And if we're not getting them in our diet, through our nutrition, through our supplementation, we're getting them from our bones or muscles.
Okay. Yeah, I love it. I love this keto alkaline diet. So exciting.
And test, don't guess, because you can think I'm doing everything right. So, on my website, we have our keto alkaline urine test strip. So just measure pH, measure your ketones, and don't be alarmed. Like, I don't care if you don't get ketones, just start getting your pH alkaline. That's the most important thing for women. And again, your urinary pH will change, right? If you wake up dehydrated, you may be acidic. Well, gosh, I want you to wake up alkaline, because over the night, your body is building your neurotransmitters, is building your bone, is building your hormones. So let's give it the nutrients that it needs. So maybe it's that you're dehydrated and that's why you're acidic. Maybe it's that you don't have enough minerals and we need to improve your minerals in your diet, your nutrition. Maybe, there are many other reasons that I go through in my programs that are the reasons you have trouble getting alkaline. But it's surprising how many, like I would say over 90% of women were acidic at the start of the program.
Really interesting. So I want to ask more about your program and what you developed, but I know we've been going down the body parts, so to speak. Is there anything you want to
Oh, yeah. So we did mental atmosphere, nutrition, exercise, certainly, digestion, detoxification, hormonal balance. Hormones are really an important part too. So hormonal balance, and that would be, again, looking at estrogen dominance. Do we have enough progesterone? what's our thyroid look like, testosterone, DHEA, some of the, other markers for hormonal balance, detoxification markers of hormones, et cetera. So we want to make sure our hormones are balanced. And a lot we can do with over the counter, like with progesterone pregnenolone. And I use that in my practice too, in my with recommendations for my clients. So progesterone, pregnenolone, DHEA, those are over the counter, and in safe hands, safe products, you at safe doses, you can get amazing results. And then the sixth piece is sexual health, right? I have a whole program called Sexual CPR. Y'all check it out, sexualcpr.com. But it's sexual health is really important because we can get our body straight, we can get our mind straight, but if we don't nurture our relationship, we're like missing the whole essence of a juicy existence, right? So that's important. There's more to sexual health than testosterone. There's more to sexual health than orgasm, right? It's a whole program, a 7-week program that I really go into details of reclaiming our sexual health, our feminine energy, right? Our masculine energy, and how we honor partnership in a very holistic, beautiful, divinely inspired way. So sexual health is an important part, and also things that keep us from having healthy intimacy as we get older, vaginal dryness, vulvar dryness, and my vulvar cream is coming out, oh my gosh, in the next month, and that's called Julva. It's a great vulvar cream to help with vaginal dryness. So I'm really excited about that. And then the final one is inflammation in the environment. So how does our environment affect us? What inflammatory effects is it having on us? And when we are inflamed, we are acidic. And it's like, the seesaw that goes on. But if we get alkaline, inflammation goes down. So easy, so inexpensive, and just testing and not guessing gives us so much internal control, gives us so much control about what our next steps are.
Awesome. Thanks for that little summary. And yeah, you've mentioned a couple of things. You mentioned the Vulvar Cream, which is not out yet, but as soon as it comes out, I think I'll put the link on the YouTube replay, and we'll be sharing it. But you do have a product out, which you saw me share on Facebook Live recently, Mighty Maca. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I love it. I loved your post too. I was like, yeah, you're traveling with it. It's so awesome.
Yeah, I really like it. I was just joking, like you gave me a little sample like a year and a half ago, and I never ate it. I never took it. And then he gave me a whole tub, and then it took me like 3 months. And then I finally took it, and I'm like, this is awesome. Like, what? Why didn't I take this sooner? But just silly. But yeah, it's really great.
Well, it's true. You never know. It's like, okay, what's this green powder? And like, there like that fear factor. I will say it looks like the fear factor, but it tastes good, doesn't it, Bridget?
Yeah, and I'm very willing to try anything. I just have so many like powders and pills, and like I'm like a supplement junkie. So I think I just, just life, I just didn't end up taking it right away. But no, it tastes great. It not absorbs, but it's very fine. So it mixes really well, which is one of my pet peeves with some powders. It's like I don't want to be like chewing on my powdered drink, especially like the video you saw me make. Like if you're traveling, I mean, it's one thing if you're making a smoothie with like fruit and greens and like things, it can be a little chunky, but there's some texture there. But if you're just drinking it with, water or almond milk, like you don't want any texture, right?
So true. You want smooth and easy.
Yeah. So tell us the ingredients, and since this is a menopause webinar, tell us how it can be beneficial for our menopausal ladies.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I, over a decade ago, I left my medical practice for a year, and just part of my healing journey with me and my family. And I traveled around the world, and at different places I was just really blessed with meeting indigenous healers and some of the world's leading experts. I mean, a whole range of people that I just say God put them in my path. Right. But I would ask, okay, what do you eat to feel, to have more energy, or what herbs or supplements? And so I really I've always been very interested in food as medicine. And in Peru, it was always Maca. Maca, the Peruvian Viagra helps with infertility, helps with energy. The ancient Incan warriors would take it before they went into battle to have energy and stamina for the fight. And then lo and behold, it's nicknamed Peruvian Viagra. So I dissected what maca was, and maca has its really own unique proteins called macaines, and it's unique to this region of Peru that grows above 11,000 feet. I mean, that's the true maca, and it's like a root, almost looks like a radish, and or a beet kind of, or a potato. It grows underground and within the rocks, and there's different colors, but pretty much the blend is amazing. And also it has a high amount of arginine. Well, arginine increases your nitric oxide, and actually all three forms of nitric oxide. And it's how Viagra works, right? Because Viagra increases nitric oxide. And so I was like, okay, that makes sense. So there's some science behind the traditional folk remedy, and then just the immune boosting properties of it. And it's very alkalinizing root too. And as I travel, like acerola, actually first encountered acerola in Brazil, mangosteen in Indonesia, different greens, and then the research orient from my research background and in medicine, the research oriented of resveratrol, and then green seed extract or grape seed extract, and turmeric, and so I blended these together in kind of red rainbow blend of ingredients, 42 ingredients in all, because that's what was really empowering to me as I kind of went on this journey. And when I came back to my medical practice, I'm like, gosh, because I had this powder, that powder. And I worked with a company to like, okay, I want to make this together for me and my patients. So my minimum order was, 500 was the minimum that any company would make for me. And I'm like, I just want it for myself. And then so I started using it for myself, my family, my clients in my practice, and we're just spread. And now we send Mighty Maca greens all around the world. And it helps with, definitely has shown to improve hot flashes, mood swings, help with hormonal balance. In a case study that I did, looked at DHEA and actually had over 70% increase in your serum level of DHEA in 2 months of using 2 to 3 scoops of Mighty Maca a day. And
oh, wow.
so fantastic, up to one client had over 200% increase in DHEA. And as far as adrenal support goes, it is really hard to move that number on your own without supplementing with DHEA. It can be very hard. So it became an adrenal support, and then hemoglobin A1Cs were dropping. So blood sugar control was better. Inflammatory markers were improving. That's the HSCRP that I would check in clients. And so these numbers that really attribute to whole quality of life started to improve. And so what do we look for? We look for hormone balance. We look to fight inflammation. We look to support the adrenals. Those 3 key factors are really important to fight over 90% of all diseases that we face.
Awesome. Yeah, that's just some really impressive statistics. And talk about the alkalizing part, and why having an alkalizing environment is important for menopause.
Yeah, absolutely. Because that's part of hormonal balance. You'll see, like, as we get into inflammation, like if you think about acidity as inflammation industry in New York City, kind of get that image. And then you think of alkaline as the Amazon jungle, calm, peace, zen, and, that kind of greenery environment. So you've got that balance, but our body needs to detoxify our hormones. It needs the mineral balance in order to do that. And all that, when we get to what's really, because I keep going deeper, I'm like, okay, so what's the underlying? And I mean, it goes to the cellular exchange across the membranes. We can get that deep when we look at alkaline and acidity, but the bottom line is it helps with alkalinity, will improve detoxification and improve your body's overall nutrient balance, so that you have, lower inflammation, able to maintain, have stable blood sugars, and improve your hormonal mood swings. Because part of our hormone balance, especially in the menopause, are these swings, right? The fluctuations that we get. And a lot of that is going to be attributed to this, I would say a part of it's attributed to our pH balance for sure. But the key building blocks or nutrients that we need to maintain healthy hormones. And I think that comes from creating a bath, an environment, to bathe ourselves in this alkaline environment. So we have that stabilizing, we have the nutrients that we need. When I look at women's blood panels, and one thing I look at is red blood cell magnesium, I would say over 80% of women over 50 that I've tested have low red blood cell magnesium. Well, magnesium is involved in over 200 processes in our hormones, in our neurotransmitters, in our metabolism. And so there are many, and that's crucial. I mean, that's a really big, that's huge. So we want to replenish magnesium, but often just supplementing with magnesium, it depends on what kind, isn't enough. We really need a complete, healthy mineral balance. We need to decrease inflammation. We need to improve digestion so our body assimilates it and that, our supplementation is not passing right through. So there are many factors to that, but magnesium is really an element that's important in so many of our hormonal processes as well.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thanks for sharing a little bit more about that. And I just kind of can picture, the minerals and the trace minerals, there's kind of, like you say, magic menopause is just kind of creating some magic so that processes in your body that need to happen do happen. There's just so much more to it than, oh, I'm getting older and everybody gets hot flashes. By the time we hit this stage in life, we usually have had a lot of stress, have a lot of, emotional things we haven't dealt with. Our nutritional status has really gone down. You've been exposed to so many toxins. So I just want our viewers to know, like, there's hope, and menopause can be a lot smoother than you may have imagined, right?
Oh, yes, it absolutely can be. And, I have a menopause report, three menopause mistakes that's available for your listeners too at go.magicmenopause.com. And we also have a menopause report card quiz. And then upcoming is my 3 secrets webinar for hormone harmony. So we've got some really good information to share going in depth, and that we'll have some live Q&A also.
Yeah, we'll share the links below this video, and we'll share the link to the Mighty Maca. And then again later when your vulvar cream, that's hard to say, comes out, we'll share that link as well. I think that you will share this now for your current program that's starting up, and then we might share this video again later. I wonder, just could tell us how often you offer this Magic Menopause program.
Yeah, so right now we had offered it back in June. We ran 130 women through Magic Menopause, and we're offering it now starting October. And so the enrollment starts to open the September 22nd, I believe.
Okay.
Program. And then we'll probably offer it sometime in the winter, January or February.
Okay.
March.
That's perfect, because I think we're going to do, some people might hear this for the first time then, but we'll be doing a menopause week on our podcast. So I think we can share this interview again because it's got some great information. I'm trying to see, there's one more thing that I put that I wanted to talk about, which was the oxytocin and the cortisol. Can we just finish on that, and then I'll let you get going to your day?
Thank you. Yeah. So oxytocin has been a really fascinating area of my study. We definitely started using it in my medical practice. Yeah. So for our listeners, oxytocin is the hormone of love and bonding and connection. It's our nurturing hormone in pregnancy. We bond through oxytocin, like high levels when we are in childbirth and breastfeeding, lots of oxytocin, and that really cements this oh my God feeling with our children, with our family, and is huge. It's also what we inject in the IV, Pitocin, to get your uterus to contract stronger. So it's been available for decades. It's very, very safe. And it's also part of the hormone that's released during orgasm, right? And so that bonds us again to our partner. And in many other ways that that oxytocin is delivered, and actually we give my oxytocin ebook for free during my webinar for the live attendees for that program.
Oh, cool.
My oxytocin ebook. But so oxytocin is also depleted during times of stress. So there's this cortisol oxytocin kind of seesaw phenomenon that goes on. It's hard to explain, but so, to go into detail with it. But if you can just imagine when you're under stress, time for love and bond and connection is not there. So we either say feed and breed or fight, it's feed and breed or, fight and flight, right? So, and you're either in fight or flight or the tend and befriend. So that's kind of gives you an idea. You're in this, high cortisol state, or you're in the, nurturing, bonding, living state. So one part's life, that, high stress, high cortisol, you're on demand, you're in charge, you're fighting, you're flighting, you're dealing, whatever with what you're doing, fight, flight, freeze. Or you're in this rebuilding, nourishing, and that's really living. That's the living part, life and living, right? So there's always this balance and this interplay that comes together. But when you are in chronic long-term stress, or as I discovered through my personal experience with post-traumatic stress disorder, is that eventually both cortisol and oxytocin are low. And that's that burnout stage. And people experience that, what I've recognized that people experiencing in other ways. Burnout, right? You used to love going to work, but now you can't stand it. Whether it's, I was like in medicine, it's the paperwork that takes the passion out of, right? And now it's the computer work. We're not designed to look at computers. We're clinicians. We're people. And so that leads to a really high rate of physician burnout, or just the chronic stress. Say I was laughed, God's timing of the perimenopause and teenagers in the household, the same timing. What is God thinking? Now that is argument for teen pregnancy. Okay, I'm not arguing for teen pregnancy, but let me tell you, having a child at 42, so that's a whole nother discussion, Bridget. We can go into that. So there's that low cortisol, that low oxytocin. It feels like loneliness. It feels like depression. It feels like burnout. And, it's not a good place. It's a disconnected place. And what we want to do is have these healthy, that healthy interplay between life and living, and bring that connection back into place. And I'm really passionate about that. So in my program, Magic Menopause, we go deep into reattaching, revitalizing that cortisol oxytocin connection, and go further into that in sexual CPR as well.
I love that. It just resonates so much for me, and I'm sure other women as well. Like, when I'm under high stress, which can be a lot in modern life, right? You feel like you're always under, there's so much to do, I'm never done. And then you just sort of feel like you're being a bitch, to be honest. Like you don't want to like hug people, and you don't have time for this, and you just like, and it's like you don't want to be that way, but it's just sort of like, you just explained it so well. It's just like chemically what happens, like your body's like, no, we're in a crisis. It's not time to like make out with your husband right now. But then your husband's like, what the heck? Like, why are you such a bitch, But then you get the point where neither is happening, where you're just like, I just don't care anymore, which I think a lot of people can relate to too. And that's not a good place to be either. So yeah, just so great to know that you've got resources to address this. So we really just appreciate all your research and being here with us.
Yeah. No, it's great to be here with you too. And I think that's what I want women to know, especially in your 40s and 50s, that we do feel sometimes that, that low cortisol, low oxytocin stage, and we're disconnected from our partners. And know the physiology driving your behavior. And so you really need to take the time, vacation together, create honeymoons, create those experiences that, number one, give your body a chance to readjust. Get reconnected to your natural circadian rhythm. And, I give a whole module on that in my Magic Menopause program. But, really reconnect relationship time, because you'll see that, you'll have that time. You're like, oh, I do love my husband. I do love my kids. Even though they're teenagers.
Yeah. And in all of our life too, like vacations are awesome, and I fully promote them, or taking a year off to travel is awesome as well. But like, I think, I had my son at 34, and so my hormones, you've mentioned at 35 hormones are starting to change. So I had a lot of hormone change, and a young child and a clinic, and I just had to evaluate things. It's like, this is too much. I don't like who I'm becoming when there's this much on my plate. And I know you've changed your practice as well, and you've got a younger child. So it's like, I think for anybody watching, it's like, sometimes you just have to evaluate, like, is my life set up in a way that nourishes my hormones, nourishes my self-care, as we talked about earlier, so I don't like resent my own life and the people in it.
So well said. Absolutely. Prioritize.
Yeah, and this kind of sounded like our note, but yeah, I think there's a lot of really fun and positive things we talked about today. We've got your Magic Menopause program, and we'll share links for that along with this video. Any last words, Anna?
No, I just think that, I just want your listeners to know, and for all women listening, is that no matter where you are right now, how you're feeling, or, if you think it's hopeless, or even if you, just like, okay, I know that there's something in my next stage that I want to be better. And if you're dreaming that and you're feeling that kind of unsettledness in your inner spirit, it's time to make the shift, time to make the changes, and really prioritize yourself. And always hold hope in your heart, because there is hope. And I've seen it in the most really tragic circumstances, and things turn around from the spiritual, physical, mental, familial, relational levels. And it's a beautiful place. It's a beautiful thing to happen. So wherever you're at, I encourage you to be the, guiding light, to do your self-care, and to really let your light shine. And thank you for listening today.
Yeah, thanks for your time, and thanks for everyone for attending. We always, that's why we're here, to interact with you. So thanks so much, and bye, everybody.